Well, welcome back, Cosmic Family. I'm very excited to share with me. We have Syrissa Saka today on our show. Thank you, Syrissa. And here
Aw.
is a little bit about Syrissa. She is a creatrix, an inner seeker at heart, practicing medicine in its many forms with an emphasis on community weaving. She is a trauma informed facilitator, herbalist, Reiki and sound practitioner, chef, land steward, as well as doctoral student of clinical acupuncture and traditional Chinese herbal medicine. Woo!
We have that
Really
in
test
common.
me. Yeah. She began Illumina Energetics to bring light to the ever evolving craft of healing modalities available to us in the growing Aquarian age, using ancient techniques for modern understanding, which empowers individuals to ignite the flame of self realization within themselves. We find a map that suits your goals and sets you up for sustainable change. Just as other helped her, she recognizes that it is an honor to illuminate another soul into their truth. Ooh, beautiful. Thank you for your
Mm.
bio, Sarissa.
Yeah. I gave you a mouthful there.
I know, I know. I totally loved it. I went into my like voiceover acting.
I
So,
know.
Sarissa, you have been with us on the Cosmic Labyrinth journey for quite the
Mhm.
beginning, and it was really beautiful. We met, I think the first time was online when we were doing the COVID online play shops, where we were, as first, we all started off as being just burnt out professionals looking to have like educational purpose, and then COVID hits, and we're like, here you go.
Yeah, yeah, it was a wild ride. It was definitely a wild ride. And I was living in New York City at the time. So to watch all of the energy just shifting and so many things happening and just the uncertainty for a lot of people. And I will say that though there was a lot of uncertainty, a part of us was like, oh, are the every generation has they talk about like the hippie movement in the 60s, 70s of like, what is it going to take for people to realize? When are people going to wake up? And then things like this happen, and we're like, oh, well, these are the catalysts, right? These are the things, and this is the momentum we need to really kind of move forward. So it's been such an honor to be a part of that movement, especially with the Cosmic Labyrinth, because we can't do it alone. So it's really awesome to see everybody weaving together, and it's given me so much strength. It's given me so much just empowerment to step into things because I call it the youngest child syndrome. I'm so used to oh no, you can do it, you can do it. I'll just lead or I'll watch or I'll observe, and I love helping out. But it definitely gave me the initiative to step up. I've always loved leading from behind, the wolf pack style. And for once, it's been good to kind of step forward every once in a while and give some insights. So, yeah, it's been a journey. It is a
Yes, it
journey.
has. It is. It is.
Some could say it's the self-healing journey. Love
Just
that right
to remind
there.
everybody that it is a self-healing journey. But through that journey, we find amazing allies, including, other
Yeah.
soulmates that show up as, other amazing people that we connect with and feel connected in their own journey. And, for you as well, like you have been on a beautiful, I appreciate your story because, you're in a sun in Aquarius, and a lot of people get confused on even just the symbol of Aquarian, right? Because they always think it's a water sign because it is a beautiful soul, having a vase and like pouring water out of the vase, right? And so for me, when I see you and we met because you were actually like this basically elixir, bending, it's basically like a modern day like tonic making bartender, but like tonic tender,
Yeah.
right?
Herbal mixology, if you will.
Mixology, yeah,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
had like I was like, you were talking about how like people would come in, they would tell you, oh, I got headaches, I got all these problems, and you would just like, let me pour you a drink, right? Very much like the Aquarian, right? Being able to handle people's emotions, pouring them a drink, here you go, have a nice tea, and then like really. changes how like we would see like as even bartenders, they're known to tend to be more like a therapist for people who come in and they're
Yeah, they call
struggling.
them the poor man's therapist. Yeah.
Exactly. So like for you, without the alcohol, you did it more like with these tonics, beautiful elixirs. So I'd love
Yeah.
for you to share, what would you say is kind of your own journey of like learning to trust yourself in
Hmm.
that you knew the answers to what medicines you needed to heal your own self. I know
What a
it tends to be,
question.
depending on the person, it's been
No.
a long, lifelong journey, but anything would,
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a really insightful question, and it's important to know where you came from, to know where you're going, you know. So, yeah, for me, first and foremost, I was super grateful, as you mentioned, the job that I did have that you mentioned at the Elixir bars, because when you said, how do you know? The truth is I didn't know. If I was being really honest with you, I did not know. I knew since the age of like 3, one of my earlier memories of like, I knew I wanted to deliver babies. I used to tell any adult that would listen, I wanted to bring new souls into the world. I wanted to deliver babies. I was so intrigued by it. Um, I grew up in a chiropractic office. My father was a chiropractor. My mother helped ran the office. She also ran bars. They're not much of a drinker, but ran bars, right? So she's got the attention to detail. She's wonderful with people. She's wonderful also, just that comes in handy in sales, you know. And she ran my dad's chiropractic office. I got to see how they work together to make something successful, and they're able to do that and stronger because they do it together. And so that was kind of my younger years. And then by the time I got to college, I had a partial scholarship for a program called WISE, Women in Science and Engineering. And I was really fortunate enough to also study in that program when I was in high school, in their high school program with my father. And so I think that bond definitely shaped a lot of what I enjoyed to study, and it gave me the permission to do it. Looking back, not that I don't think about it that often, but definitely highlights that. And so when I entered college, that was still the goal. But 2 years in, I was kind of miserable, you know. It's like, oh, it's so much information. Like I was never that much of a hard book studier, so it's a lot of changes. And by my second year, there was some community in our college and Greek life. There was an accident and some people passed away. And so I got to watch a huge community grieve together. And through that grieving, it kind of sent me into my own inner inquiry, if you will. And I kind of just, I was a little depressed. I was like, you know what? I don't even like hospitals. What am I doing with my life? Like these classes are so hard. I don't even like any of the things I really, the way that they go about teaching and educating. It wasn't really my thing. I said, how could I do this for so many more years and then get into a hospital where I don't even like hospitals? So I really had to reevaluate a lot of things. And so I shocked a lot of people, especially in my family, I think, when I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was really hard for me. And I ended up my last year, right before I graduated the last semester, right in the beginning of the semester, and then right before I graduated, I got shingles twice. Um, and I'm very grateful it wasn't so far along. It was more minimal, but it was there. You could feel it, it's like hot needles and agitation, So yeah, I was stressed. I thought I threw my life away, right? I was like, what am I doing? So there wasn't even a knowing. It was just this feeling of like some things have to change and I have to try something else. And the first time around, I took the medication the doctor gave me. It went away. Cool. The next time it came, I went back to her. They gave me the same medication, and I was like, I took it home, and then I just did some research, and I was like, there's just got to be. Why does it keep coming back? And they tell you if you get it once, you're more likely to get it again. So I researched some more homeopathic remedies, some herbal remedies. I got some tinctures. I think I rolled a joint. I got in the bath, It's your mind, it's your nervous system. Okay, my nervous system is over triggering itself. So what do? I need to relax, and it starts mental. So that's what I did, and I went back to the doctor, and I still had the medicine, but it was gone. The shingles was gone. So she was like, "Well, how did you do that?" So I explained to her just what I said to you, and we just had like a solid like 20 seconds of just like staring at each other from across the room, like, and that was like an aha moment for me because as I'm explaining it to her and how it worked for me and how I really just felt better. And she was just dumbfounded, like, I don't get it. Like, why, I'm sorry, why didn't you take the medication again? And it was just this really loud confirmation for me. And I always ask for signs, to be loud. I'm like, tell me in a way that I would understand. I'm human. Like, please tell me in a way that is digestible for me. I am listening. If you will tell me, I will listen. And yeah, it was so loud for me of like, so you like, okay, so you like went to medical school, but you don't even get what I'm saying. So therefore, if I didn't go to medical school now, I'll be fine. And it was just this aha moment. Um, yeah, and I jumped into everything that scared me. If
Wow.
I'm being honest, I said if it was my nervous system, cool, then that's what I need to give attention to. And I did. I jumped into everything that I enjoyed, but I couldn't understand why my nervous system wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. To not have autonomy over your body for me was really not cool. And so I did. I shifted gears and I went into creative mode. I said I did all the things I used to love. I used to love like acting and I love singing. I've always loved singing, but I couldn't really do it that well in front of people. I would just like close up and get really shy. But then in a play, I would just totally be out there, and the director would be like, "How come you didn't do that?" Like when we had auditions, And I'd be like, "I don't know. I don't know." I couldn't explain it. And again, that bothered me, right? So, people have said to me like, why are you do if you don't want that to be your lifelong career, right? To be like this famous actress or why are you doing it? I said, because there's something within me that wants to understand my body. So it's not about it being a long-term career, but there's a key there for me, and I just want to pick up that key, right? Talk about gaming and life. I want that key. I want to see what that's going to do for me. Um, and people along that journey, they might not understand you at all. They might think you're crazy or like, you're throwing your life away. But as long as you remain grounded in that truth, and like I said, I didn't even fully know what it meant. I'd be lying if I said I did. I just knew that I needed to do it. And I've always been in food and hospitality since I was 14 in the food industry. So for me, that was something that came really naturally. So I'm fortunate enough that always had that job to sustain me. I never had to worry about, that's a real thing, the starving artist. But I always tell people, I'm like, well, if you work at a restaurant, you're less likely to be starving. So there's always that.
Right,
Um,
right. You steal more
yeah,
of a bird
so
with one meal.
right, yeah, so I've always loved that environment. And so for me, the restaurant environment, the events, I've always worked events, large events, small events. So it all went hand in hand. And so I just kept saying, I would write it all the time in my journal, like allow those things to come to me, allow me to be prosperous and abundant, doing those things that feel good to me. And that's how all the botanical elixirs really came to be. I hit a point in my journey where I was like, I'm loving doing all of these creative things, but also now I need it to come to a culmination. I don't want to have all of these jobs anymore. I want to have one job that puts together all of these things that still allows me to creatively explore, but still be stable and abundant, and like clockwork, a director of mine I did some short films with. We became really good friends. She called me in one day. She's like, I'm opening up this new space. You got to check it out. You're going to love it. And I walk in and I was like, what is this? Where am I? What's happening? And it was just covered in plant, like seat, like moss walls with sacred geometry all over it. It was a piece of art, using the plants on the walls. That was near Madison Square Park in the city of New York City, and it was beautiful. And so she was working behind the botanical bar. I hung out there all day. They offered me a job. I was like, yeah, yeah, totally. They said they were opening up another house. I went to check it out by on John Street, World Trade Center, and it was twice the size, also a hotel, conventions, bigger space. And the bar was going to be contracted with a different person. And I have to shout out the amazing and magical, majestic Ambrosia elixirs. And so I got to be a part of their herbal team. And I learned so much. And I have to say, I learned so much because of the people that were around me. There was always one, one girl who knew more about the chemical constituents of a plant, another girl who knew more about the folklore and the history, someone else who was really good at blending them all together and being the generator, the do it. There's all of that, and I felt so fortunate because I got to learn and play with people who were so like-hearted, and it gave me the freedom to do that. And they beautifully saw that. We feel like we all saw each other's light, and we all got to kind of raise each other up in that way. Um, and yeah, so it opened a whole new world for me where cooking was always my therapy. I grew up in a big Italian family, so for me, the kitchen was where I loved to dance the most, and be in my element and just do it. People say, "Oh, how much?" And that it's so popular now to be like, "You stop whenever your ancestors tell you to," and that is exactly how I feel too. Because I'm like, "Oh, what would my mom do?" Or like, "What would my grandma's taste like?" And then I kind of say, "Well, what does my body need right now?" Right? So that was a new element that coming in to the assemblage and with Ambrosia really taught me working in a beautiful herbal like coven, if you will, with beautiful women of, oh, okay, well, behind a botanical bar now, it's not so much about just what do you want to taste, it's like what do you want to feel. And that was such a game changer for me. It allowed me to rewire my brain, right? Because when it's your work, when you're there all the time, now that becomes a part of you. And so I will forever be grateful for that chapter in my life because it showed me who I want to be and what I can be. It gave a lot of us, it was a seed. It gave a lot of us the ideas of what could be possible. Um, Whether it's what to do or what not to do doesn't matter. There's so many beautiful gifts in each of those. And as the world is changing, it gave us the power and the fire to say, oh, we want to create these things. So now it became, what do you want to feel? Do you have too much energy? Right? Maybe you want a little less. Do you need more? Do you feel a little unbalanced? Do you want to be grounded? Do you want to be more self-aware? So these are all different questions that you get to ask yourself. And then we had a menu of elixirs that could do that. Um, and now, obviously, that as that it's developed, my skills, my craft has now developed. I love working with people one on one. I love reading it, feeling into people's constitutions, and saying and their personalities and their environment, right? And then seeing how that all weaves together and like what would be best for you. Where are you living? What's available to you? Um, and so it really is, it is more of an ancient way. This is how we used to live. So, we just got a little bit off kilter. A lot of things in life tend to go from one end of the spectrum all
Yeah,
the way to the other one. We can see that
yeah,
even right now in politics, right? It's like you go
yeah.
all the way to this way, but no, no, no. The whole point is we have to come in the middle. The whole point is we have to be here. And so we want to do our best to just guide not only ourselves, but if we're also guides or facilitators, we want to keep ourselves there, but also allow people the opportunity to see that they can free flow on that spectrum until they feel what is good for them. There's not a one answer, one size fits all, as they say,
Yeah. It's kind of
solution.
like this lab, right? It's both ancient with ancient tools, but it's
Yeah.
cosmic and still, fusing the two energies together, right? Because, I think
Mhm.
we are experiencing, I've been saying this a lot and seeing this a lot in people's charts, but the Pluto in Libra generation, the ones between the millennials and the Generation X, they're kind of bridging a lot of these ancient wisdom back of like going from one polarity of the conservative, going to the progressive to
Right.
say, what's the best way for us to connect with everybody else if this is where people are moving to, but like bring the tradition with you and the culture with you so you're not just leaving behind like our ancestors who like taught us everything, and remember like that is what made us, incredibly healthy, that we survived so many problems, so many issues back in the days. And today, ironically, with so much modern technology, we probably are the sickest, we've ever been, right?
Right, the irony is so in our
Yeah,
face.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like we're kind of finding that balance, and even for yourself, like you went and you kind of went from like being able to enjoy treating people in a like public setting to a more one-on-one, where now you're following your heart into getting a doctorate in traditional Chinese medicine, which is
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have that in common. Where when we first met, like both of us weren't there. I started my journey to it, and then finding out that you wanted to go into that journey like even made us even closer because both have this like, I mean, how many people can talk about yin yang as if it's like a everyday thing, and people are like, what are you talking about? Or wanting to look at people's tongues.
Right. Like, could you just
Yeah, can you just
you didn't, I know I love that as well. And even for me, like with the journey of acupuncture, I think I just really put off I just didn't want to go back to school, if I'm being really honest with you.
Me too, me
Um
too.
yeah, and it was so I do have I have a decent amount of friends who do practice acupuncture, and it helps me so much in my 20s, throughout my journey. As I said, my nervous system, that was what did it. I mean, I found a practitioner too. When I went found someone under my insurance, it was so generic. They just I'm sitting there, a couple points, heat lamp, cool, boom. And then I was like, this was the first woman I went to. She might not take insurance, but that was like a whole journey. I mean, I had an out of body experience the first time, and it definitely was her energy, the space that she had. It was so homey. She played like French jazz. It was beautiful. And yeah, and it really saved my sanity in my early 20s. So, like I said, even growing up in a chiropractic office, it was my father really did try so many things to help me with the chronic issues. And then when I tried acupuncture, I was like, oh, there's something here. Like every modality has its magic and its medicine. And for me, this was just something that was deeper to get to the root of chronic things. And so I contemplated, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to be an acupuncturist for a while because of that, because it had such an impact. And then when I started to really, the world changed, and then we were all talking about it at the labyrinth, just all these different modalities. And then when you started your journey, I was like, all of this really is possible, and it really would do me such a it would do me such a great service to ground down all of the esoteric things that I spent my 20s exploring. Um, I was so fortunate enough that we were the plants place at the assemblage, and we had elders and shamans and doctors and scientists come from all around the world. And they were like the best of the best sharing. And so I just so happened to be in the room. Again, the universe, thank you so much. So grateful. Um, and I was also very impatient, mind you. That was a part of my story when I said, I want to work at this bar. I waited. They're like, oh, it's not open yet. It took 8 months. And I would kept poking them. I was very impatient. So them like big mahalo to the bosses who were like, probably like, this chick needs to learn how to calm down. Because I was like, before we open it, like when is this happening? Just checking in, just checking in, just checking in. And then 8 months passed, and on my birthday, literally on my birthday, I got a letter in the mail, and I opened it, and it was dated my birthday. And it said, it was a contract. We want to invite you to join our team. And I was like, literally looked up and I was like, thank you. Okay. Like, I was just impatient, because I knew there was something there and I didn't even know what it was yet. And it changed my life. And so there's that universe gives you those little gifts. And so all we have to do is listen. And that was the first step of the journey. And then after 2020 in the Cosmic Labyrinth, this was me listening again in deep meditation in Peru. And finally, it was just like, this is the steps. These are the things you do to get to the long-term goal in which you are seeing. Because I kept seeing the long-term things and I was like, that's wonderful. But remember that impatience I talked about? Okay, so how do I now get there? Because I'm doing my best, but I would like a little help. And it clearly gave me that rundown of like, and doing acupuncture is going to do everything to push you in the right direction and to really ground down all of those esoteric things. And it doesn't mean you get rid of them, right? If anything, as you know, Charlie, it is based in animism. Like anything we go back into, all of these modalities, right? All of these ancient crafts, skills, ways of being, it was all based in animism. Everything is alive, everything is interconnected. There is the yin to the yang and everything, and then within that there is the yin to the yang within that. And so it just hit me like boom, like this is what you do. And I remember I called my mother and I told her that. I said, I think this is what I'm gonna do. Because I kept saying I'm not going back to school. No way, no way, no way. And she was like, that sounds really good for you. And I was like, right on. Okay. So Yeah, everything happens for a reason, and I'm a big believer in time, things will unfold. And so we have to give ourselves grace and patience while we still have action steps in following the things that like light our heart on fire. And that
Mhm.
could also look like nerves, right? Let my story be, if anything, a word to other people that are like, but I'm scared. This there, being scared, nervousness, and excitement are the same thing biologically in our body. It's just perspective. And that is such a huge thing that I always have to remind myself, is that whenever you get nervous, you just take those deep breaths and and center yourself and ground yourself and move forward because it's there. It's there to tell you something, to show you something. And so the body is really cool like that.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is you're actually generating a lot of energy, right? And that energy, if you're not ready for it, you see it as like
Be
the opposite
overwhelming.
of it. Exactly. But if you realize that like here's some energy now to actually take action, and we learn to not get in our way, I think this is where like again going back to this self-healing journey, sometimes we do get in our way of our healing, of our own fulfillment, of our own journey that um, just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not right for us, right? Because a lot of times, too many people will tell you, hey, nobody's ever done it. Well, are you going to be the one trying it? Actually, maybe you are the perfect person to
Right.
do it, right? You are supposed to. And I think we so often are, whether it's our family, other people who are, more afraid than us or maybe worry for us. I mean, our parents, I love them, but like, like all parents, you get nervous because our children doing something that they've never done before is even like scarier for them, right? So for us to kind of like have that almost that confidence that we're not worrying ourselves and others because the energy is there for us for the taking. So thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%. I love the way that you frame that.
thank you.
Yeah, it can definitely be scary. And at the same time, I think that the whole world is changing. And so everything is scary right now. And I think that that's also something really important to keep in mind because we're at a day and an age where there really is no safety in anything. So what are you really waiting for? We're not in our parents' generation anymore. We are really here to carve our own path in so many ways, that it's actually so blatant, and I'm grateful for that. I'm very, very grateful, for that. Let the absurdity be loud.
Yeah.
Let it be loud so that you can't deny it's happening. And then when you can't deny it's happening, have the courage to do something about it. And what's also so awesome about that is that you don't have to do it alone. There's always power in numbers. Actually, if there is anything that we need to remember, is there's power in numbers. Um, and that's at the end of the day, yes, we're the only ones who can heal ourselves. That's a fact. But, as the saying goes, we get by with a little help from our friends. So while it happens, with us, it also, on the grander scale, on a more macro level, it's when you choose to open up, to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to allow other to ask for help, right? That's when healing also happens. It's always a spectrum too on that. Where are you right now? Because some people might be, oh, I don't ever want to share anything with anyone. That's my business. But then some people might be oversharing, and then it's like you're giving away your power and your magic because you're oversharing as well. So where are you on that spectrum? We all are somewhere. And have the courage to admit to yourself that's where you are first and foremost, and then you can do something about it. And if anything, that's why we gather, because the journey can be scary. And we gather so that we remember that we're not here alone, that other people are also going through something similar. And so for me, that's most of it. And after, I've spent a lot of my career working in group settings. Actually my life. I mean, again, youngest in a big family. I wouldn't change that for the world. Always being around others. But also it taught me when to have boundaries. And again, didn't happen overnight, so not claiming that either. But it's working and living in community, whether it's on farms. Um, I moved to the island of Hawaii to learn how to grow with the things that we were brewing. This place is a special place in my heart. I used to come when my brother worked for the airline. So it had so much mana for me. And I would, every time I would be here, I would always have this epiphany about myself, about my life. And even if it was after I got back home, I'd have these realizations. And so I always knew that there would be a time in my life where I would come to steward land and to be of service here. And there was a lot for me to grow and be here. To which we actually, me and a mentor of mine looked at my astrocartography and I laughed because there's a line directly going through where I live. And I was like,
Yeah.
yep, sounds about like literally on the same spot of the island. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So, you don't always know what you're doing, but if you listen really carefully, you will get there. And it's just about, we talk about gratitude being one of the best medicines. They say you pray not to ask for things, but you pray to say thank you, right? So when you're praying, you're thanking everything that you have. And sure, it doesn't mean that your life is perfect at all, right? People think, oh, well, all these things that you change. Of course, there could be things that you want to improve, but you're praying to be grateful for this life, for this body, for this mind, for, all of those things. But then also saying, and I'm here to listen. Show me what is possible. Show me, I would love to X, Y, and Z. Show me how that's possible. And so we're asking for that guidance and resolve along the way. And as long as we just take those little mini active steps and we listen, those things will come to you, and whether it's people, it could be people, places, things, it doesn't matter. And the connection to our ancestors is one of the biggest things, and even if so many people say, I've even had people in my family say, well, that's so far in the past, like we're not really connected to that. And I'm like, okay, well, if you believe that, cool.
Exactly.
If you believe that, then that's true.
Yeah.
So if you want to put it so far out there where it's not available to you, then that's great. But I just don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that because I know that they are in my blood. I know that it's in my DNA. I know that even if I've never met them, I can still pray to them. I know that connection's never lost. I know that energy is not destroyed or created. It just gets changed into something else, that my first dog who passed away taught me that. Eternally grateful, when you lose something that's so close to you, especially as a kid. That was like the first, I think that was probably my first existential crisis, was like my dog passing away, in the middle of the night, and I go downstairs and my
Oh,
dad took it like such a champ. I had all these questions, and that's really what I remind myself of that all the time. Well, he might not be here physically, but I know that he will always be with me energetically, and I have those memories. So if I want to believe that, that's true. But if I don't want to believe that, then okay, that's also not your reality. It's also not available to you, probably. We all have that dial. I have a beautiful sister who explained it to me that way once, and that's the best way I've ever heard of it. It's just like a radio dial. The attunement. You can turn it up, you can turn it down. Some people are born with it all the way on. They don't want it on. This what they'll take substances to try to dial that down, and then we call them crazy. So
mm-hmm.
there's all of that spectrum as well, and you get to decide. That's a part of this new, what people call that new age, whatever that means. It's just this age understanding what's around us and how this matrix works is by the elements, right? We know that. And some of the best things I ever saw a couple years ago, 2019, I had an honor of helping out and being of service and working a gathering of 40 indigenous elders called Aniwa. And one of the most beautiful things I got to see, I didn't get to attend the entire play shop that they were doing. I had to go and drop stuff off and like someone to help someone, and I'm like dropping it off, and I'm watching this one elder from one tribe meet another elder from another tribe. They never met each other, first time they ever even left their homes. And he saw their medicine wheel, and they didn't speak the same language, but he was like, stop, and he's pointing. And so I stopped because I was like, what's happening? And he's like pointing to him and trying to explain in his language to a translator, like, look, look, look. And he's like, give me this, give me this. And he's like, look what I have. And they're medicine wheels. They look so similar, right? And I'm like, it's the basis of so many things that we have to start to realize, is that we have so many things in common, more than we have different. And the reasons why that they are different, that's what I find interesting, is, okay, well, how did it change? Not only how did it change, but why did it change? A lot of the times it could be sociopolitical, it could be geographic, right? There's so many different reasons as to why these changes happen. But at the same time, looking at why we are the similarities, those golden threads, those are our keys. And that's why in our generation, there's so many people who are like, "Oh, I'm bringing these ancient tools to modern understanding," right? Like that's the catchphrase. And I'm not afraid to say that. Like I'll be a cliche because that's what we want to do. But we also want to show up with reverence. We want to show up with reverence to not only the people that we're serving, but the people we're working with. Because again, it's not about the me anymore, right? Age of Piscean age. And it's about we. What can you do? How can you show up cool? Da 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 da. Right? And that's also something I love about the labyrinth is because we talk about that as a structure. Because how do you build a new paradigm by still playing by the old corporate rules that got us this way in this mess in the first place? You it can't. The answer is you can't.
Right. If you can't, right?
So
Yeah.
yeah, you can't. And I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to even see that play out. And though I'm grateful, like I said, I'm grateful that I was even a part of that or to see these things play out. It showed us showing you what not to do is almost just as big as a gift, if not more, than showing you what to do. So again, that's just about listening. When we fine tune ourselves to see what's happening around us and be like, okay, well, how do we adapt now? How do we what we say pivot and flow? How do I pivot and flow into something else that's more conducive? Because the world is we're in a day and an age where we don't really have to do much. The system's already crumbling.
Yeah.
So we just want to
Exactly.
have those systems available to us.
Right.
And we get to steward that in. And I say we because we all have a key to it.
Everybody, yeah. And this is what's really awesome about just the idea of the self-healing journey. Because if we were supposed to heal everybody, we would slow down, right? Like collectively.
Oh,
And I love that. Like as much as like the new technology, people can say the good things and bad things about either social media, whether it's AI, all this, all this tech right now is actually allowing for mass consciousness to happen because a lot of the information that we're saying, a lot of people are sharing that, but we're kind of sharing back to the basics again. So if it is the elements, and I love how you went back to the elements because a lot of what we try to teach too is like it's all about the elementals, right? Even the idea of school starts with elementary school because it's the elements, right?
love
So,
that.
it's very important for us to actually become the Avatar, the last Airbender, and Waterbender, Airbend, Firebender, all of it, because those are our natural traits. And that's why we love astrology. We love talking about how astrology is these kind of transits between each of these elements, and the fusion of elements is how we kind of come together.
Yeah.
Even this idea of the in breath, out breath, a lot of times we do a lot of yang action energy doing things, but we forget the in breath, taking a deep breath, listening. So we even talk about this with prayers and meditations, right? You can pray, ask for what you want, and then you like take a breath enough to like listen to source or God like give you feedback, right? You're like, I want all this, blah blah blah. And then during that like moment of breath, you could hear kind of all the different messages that it's like, well, here's the feedback, blah 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 blah, right? I've definitely done the moment where like you ask very vague things, and the universe is like,
I'm sorry, what?
yeah, you want these versions. You're just like, oh, never mind. I
So
was
which one? This
totally
one, this
wrong
one,
about
this
that.
one, or
Yeah,
that
but
one?
you didn't manifest that. There's always like
I don't know.
the check in, right?
Too many. Now I have anxiety. I don't.
Exactly. Did I really order this? Oh my God, I'm so angry. God, why did you give me this?
Yeah, no, it's true. And in this day, I had a beautiful teacher, Pedro of mine. Just want to show some gratitude. Uh he used to say, back in the day, that whole age, especially when it comes to psychedelics, right? Especially when LSD was invented by accident, by the way, which is great. He's like back then, the Western world, it quote unquote discovered for itself psychedelics, mind-altering substances, right? But so they were learning that, but now we're learning ceremony. What do you do with those substances to make them, in Hawaii, what they call pono, right? In indigenous ways, to walk in a good way. How do you walk in a good way with that now, right? So that to me, again, all these years, that I keep that in mind. So I give him a lot of gratitude because I just remember that a lot. As even in school, in medical school now, like learning all these herbs, I'm like, oh, there's so many all at once. And so for me, I am doing my best to really slow down, to have a relationship with them, right? Because like that's also something, even when we talk about, I love that the herbal world is blowing up now, which is amazing, as it should. We
Yes.
we all need to do that, and go back to I like to say you are your own witch.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Take it
Very
however you
Uranus
want.
and Taurus. Uranus
Yeah,
and
you.
Taurus brought that back for sure.
What did you say?
Uranus and Taurus brought back all the witches, all the
Yeah.
occult, all the herbology. Yeah.
Yeah, that we are you're the maestro to this symphony that you are playing right now. And so that understanding has to come back first and foremost. And
Hmm.
I think that surrounding yourself also with people who understand that is only going to further that journey for you. Because it's really hard to do that when you're around people who kind of kill the seed before it gets to sprout. So yeah, first and foremost, your surrounding is so important. And also just remembering, with all of these plant medicines becoming more prevalent in today's world, yes, we do want healing, and there's a reason why they're becoming more prevalent. But we also need to remember that the whole life is a ceremony. And so we don't need to be going from one to the other, 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 to the other. Right? Even servers going, okay, this, and then that, and then this, and then that, and this, and da, 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 da. Slow down. Kamate, like, where are we going? There's not a rush, is my point. There should never be a rush to do all of these things because it's not going to sink in. It's not the integration. It's just as much as you want to think I'm doing the integration. And I say that with love because I've also just seen it so many times and it's also really heartbreaking. Because I know that people have good intentions. I understand that it comes from a place of wanting to do good, but again, the classic, you got to put your own mask on first before you can help others. So it's no good if we're just running from one thing to the other. Um, as many people, another parallel is like people want to be masters of something so quickly, right? You can take Reiki 1, 2, 3, and then you're a master. That
Exactly.
takes time. That takes time and dedication and consistency and mentorships. And so again, I say this with love. It's a great thing that people are getting into these modalities, and I won't take that away. I'm not trying to take that away. But it's also of having the due diligence to have practice. And that also, again, is why community is so important. Not only does that have self accountability now, because that's so important, um, you have self accountability, but you also have a chance to explore with people, right? It's like, oh, I get to help you and you get to help me. Reciprocity is now understood. Okay. And also that abundance comes in many forms. I don't have to charge someone $1,000 for a ceremony or a session when it's like, okay, well, that because that's not readily available to them. If they can't do that consistently, then who am I really helping?
Hmm.
And I just think in a day and an age where I understand that as healers, we want to learn how to make abundance for ourselves because it used to be that you had a medicine man or a woman that was in your village and they were taken care of because they took care of you. That's just how it
Hmm.
worked. So we lost that in this capitalistic world. But then now you see everyone doing capitalistic things to do healing modalities. And I'm like, but that can't be it either. And I say that with love. It just, again, it doesn't align. They don't align. So we have to be able to have the self accountability and the righteousness to say, oh, how can I be of service? How can you even exchange, right? Bartering, exchanging until it also feels fair is something again, and I think in this Aquarian age is coming back, right? It's the philanthropic mind. Okay, well, this is what I have in my services. This is what you have in your services. How can we then work together? And then we create a world that we want to see without resentment either, because you don't feel like you didn't get what you deserved, right? And having empathetic communication is also something that along this self-healing journey is such a key. You have to speak not only to yourself with empathetic communication, but also then how to learn how to do that with other people. And that is just an evolving practice always. It's never ends.
Yeah, I feel like there's a
Um,
lot of reevaluating yourself too in your own skills, right? Because a lot of times we can see and review ourselves on how we did the treatment or how well we did something, but to the person who doesn't know anything about what we love, right? About even herbs or about Chinese medicine, even before acupuncture, there's just so much that you can already have and support someone with. And a
yeah,
lot of times, like we think because we studied it and we went through it like, oh, it's easy for people to understand this, and a lot of times no, like have the stuff that I
yeah,
say to my
it's true.
patient, they're like, oh my god, you like changed my mind, and that's all I need for like a week, because like any more information and it blows their brains out, right? And so I've had to be very careful in like how much information we provide
Right.
to our patient before they feel overwhelmed and then they go backwards in their like healing journey. um, but
Yeah,
I often say, to my patients too, it's like, hey, look, I'm not doing any healing. Your body's actually healing itself. I'm
yeah.
putting needles to make the electrical current be more aware of where we should put more attention into the body, so the body kind of goes, hey, okay, this is the things that we need to adjust. But it is really your body adjusting. And that goes back to how you've been kind of saying the whole time. We got to learn to trust the inner feedback loop that's happening in our body, in our hearts, in our minds, in our gut, because all these are part of this, enteric system. Even as a
It's
Virgo energy.
intelligence. We talk about artificial intelligence all the time. How about we talk
Exactly.
about innate intelligence? I would
Exactly.
love for that to be a
Body
new thing
intelligence,
to
right?
blow
Emotional
up.
intelligence. Yes,
Right, but and that's
exactly.
all innate. That's my point is like one there, it's the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. It is the mind,
Exactly.
the body, and the spirit.
Yes. Yes.
And we when we realize that they're intertwined, yeah, it's powerful and it's one of those things too people say that they understand, but at the end of the day it's really hard to practice. And again, I can understand that. So to go back to what you were
Yeah.
saying,
I think
it's
it's the
it's
embodied.
wildly important to give
Yeah.
people things in digestible pieces. So that's,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely true.
And especially where I feel like social media has made that attention span get smaller and smaller.
Oh, I know.
So we have to like get even shorter and shorter with our bits of information.
I know. And me, especially when it comes to just the way that I understand my practices, whether it's herbal things or modalities or what it's so I have this, I don't even know how to say it. I have this with things like social media. It's hard to put in um people are like, well, what herbs can I take for this or what can I take for that or
Yeah.
what can I take for that? Um and it's just interesting for me and it's like my whole I did the technology like throws me off a little bit. So I'm healing my relationship with technology, I say that. um, but I commend people that share things in a good way on there because it does take work to think about how do I say this in a way that could be good for everyone to get that they don't always need to take this specific thing when they feel this because there's certain reasons why you would take this one or maybe if it's this you would take this instead. So nuanced, right? So I'm just talking about those nuances. It's
Yes.
hard to get that across on that. So I pray that not only myself, but I pray that other people, we all get better at that as a collective, because there's just so many things. I went to a study the other day about artificial dyes, how they're linked to different, different behavioral conditions. And I like as I'm going to read it and I share it to on my Facebook so that I could remember it, like link it. And I'm reading the
Moments.
paper, the
Uh-huh.
study.
Mhm.
As I'm reading this study, not even 30 seconds later, I love it. This is why family is great. My sister messages me, my oldest sister, and she's like, no, false, da 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 da. And I was like, bro, I'm like reading it right now. That's so crazy that you're, how did but I love that because she also always keeps me accountable, and she's very like, oh no, look, I read it or I saw this other thing and she's sharing that with me. And I'm like, I was dumbfounded and I share this because the whole paper didn't even make sense. It was just all false. And I was like, how do we do that now? Now we share false things So it was mind-boggling to me. So I went back and unsaved it, obviously. But but it was just funny. Like I saved it. I was like, oh, let me read this so I can understand the study. And then as I'm reading it, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So it could fool so many people. Um, so I bring that up to say it's also the age of discernment. And that's
Right.
one of the biggest things that we need along this self-healing journey. And just as me, just as I'm saying, like I saw something and I share it just as I'm reading this study. So I save it. And then I'm like, oh my God, as I'm reading it, I'm like, this doesn't even fucking make any sense. So, we really need to have discernment, not just with the things that we put online, although that's so important too, but just with like everything, the things we're consuming, the people we're hanging out with, the places that we're staying in, even though it might not be that great for us. So, I think we're also learning that that's also in our power. So when we talk about being the maestro of your own symphony, um, realizing that we can take a breath for a moment and say, hey, maybe that wasn't right, or hey, I made a mistake, or hey, that maybe that wasn't the best thing to do, is one of the healthiest things that we can also learn, and that's just to be human.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing it that way. And just want to share too that like those are perfect times for retrograde to actually review the parts of your life that you could actually take a look at and go, hey, you know what? Maybe I could do this a little bit better. And I think this is where going back to like the best way to find better discernment is to do more self reflection, right? And that's the in breath. That's what we call meditation, where you're like listening to the universe for feedback, saying, okay, is this what you really want? I can manifest more for you of this tomorrow. And you're like, no, 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 that turned out not what I wanted. Or maybe like, yes, yes, I want more of this, please. And I think I find, even for myself, I'm always reminded that like sometimes the way I want to connect with the universe, I feel like I'm doing it telepathically, assuming the universe can read it telepathically. Yet, like, ironically, we get mad when, like, the things that aren't working because we're, again, maybe in our heart, we're not in line with what we're thinking about. And so we actually misdirect energy that we want to manifest, right? And so this also the idea of also understanding healing for yourself is make sure that you're self directed and self reflecting what's happening. Otherwise, I joke about the whole cold plunge right now, right? Because like cold plunge became like an over abused thing because everybody I had these joke people like, oh, your immune system's down. Go do a cold plunge. I'm like, not in the dead of winter. You don't do cold plunges. No, you don't start saying
Or
cold
women
plunge for
on your
everything.
cycle.
Or women on the cycles, right? Like it became
Because I
such a
like cold
thing.
plunges, but that's a big no-no. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. And it's really funny because, ironically, like think about who used to do the cold plunges, right? Even racially, because even in the race of like those who don't have a lot of melanin and are cannot handle the heat because they go out 30 minutes later, they're on fire, they need cold plunges, right? Because that fire is burning within. So the cold plunge, because why they love the winter months is because they can do cold plunge all week long, right? And because it was naturally available. But it's funny that in wanting to have something as normal as a cold plunge used during the winter to support the even used during the summer correctly actually is really good therapy
hmm
if it's not done correctly and taking out of context. And now you put that to the average person in their home, and now you have access to a cold plunge when it's now out of season, just like our food. Now you've
right.
introduced, a
Yeah.
medicine that actually works really well at certain times. You now can create a contraindication in your own system because you're like, oh, I don't know. I was using cold plunge for the last 5 days and it's like freezing outside. And I go, and so you don't know why your like legs aren't moving anymore. It's
Right.
like you like congealed your blood to the point where like it's frozen in your veins. And I think people don't understand that like not everything should be done all the time. Actually, real medicine is only
Right.
allowed to be done for like five
Situational.
days
Right. That's why we
situationally.
call them patterns, right?
Exactly. You're just trying to get back to homeostasis. And again, like in our medicine, like, if it takes longer than 2 weeks to get back into homeostasis, you're taking the wrong medicine. Right.
hmm
And so
hmm
most medicine is like a 5 day thing, 4 day thing. So that's why it's so funny. You're like, oh, yeah, I've been doing like medicine journeys for like 6 months. You're like, what kind of problems do you have that you need to take medicine, every day for 6 months or like every weekend or every other weekend for 6 months. It's just a lot, right? And so this is where we have to recognize that the sacredness of medicine, it's that it's done short burst to help you bring back to homeostasis, so then you can like go back and like reconnect and understand what feedback loop was having issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then all goes back to listening too.
Yes,
And it's
exactly.
it's amazing, especially like I said, food and beverage industry, when you ask people, oh, hey, what's up? Like, how you doing? What can I get you? What would you like? They're like, oh, it all looks good. I want all of it. And people tell me that a lot too. Even behind botanical bars, right? Or vending, like I was vending yesterday. And someone's like, oh, it all looks good. Just put it all together. And I said, oh, okay. That might be a little confusing for your body. I don't know if we want to do that. And they laugh, oh, why? And I'm like, because they do different things. So I'm not gonna just like there are some that I can totally put together and pair. That's wonderful. But I get that a lot. People, oh, just give me one of everything. And I'm like, oh, slow down. Where are we going? These are just little things, that and in Chinese medicine that when we're diagnosing, right, we would just call that observation you know so I love that in a way. Everything relates to everything if you look hard enough, but for me it's like all of the experience that I had in the food and beverage industry, like literally serving people. Like I used to have two jobs, like even at like 15, 16 years old. It's like I would serve people breakfast, and then like later at night I'd be at a different place and I'd be serving them dinner. So it's like you can tell a lot by someone. It's like what they're consuming, how they're ordering, what they're asking you. And so all of that has informed me now as a doctoral student and as someone who's I just hit like 120 patients, which is really cool since September. Time is flying.
Yes.
Yeah, and the more you get to observe people and see how they work too. People were just unaware. Some people don't even they just don't know. So when you ask them these questions, they're so unaware of like, I've never thought of that before. And I'm like, okay, well that's great. So maybe this is something that you can now, think about later down the line, and maybe it'll help you. And most of the time it does. It's something is so simple of having this self-actualization. And so that's why again we say, as you said, like I'm not really healing you. I'm just here to be a sounding board. Or people say to me all the time, "Oh my God, it's crazy. It's like you're reading my mind." I'm like, "No, actually, I'm not really reading your mind. I'm just showing you what you're showing me, and so now you can see it. And it's just we come from like a neutral place where we can just be that sounding board for people. And it's crazy because people try to make it sound so complicated all the time, all these things. And I'm like, for me, that's really as simple as it gets, is I'm really just here to be a sounding board. And it's been just as other people have helped me along my journey. And I'm so grateful for that. And now I understand how much of an honor it is to allow somebody else to come into their truth, to see their truth, because sometimes they just don't see it.
Hmm.
It's we're in a really big time of disillusionment,
Hmm.
and that's why you are your own witch. You know,
Yes.
choose. This is a choose your own adventure, as we like to say.
Yes. Definitely choose your own adventure and choose. Don't even not choosing is a choice. So might
Choosing
as
is a choice, yeah.
yes,
A
might as well
hundred,
go
yeah,
into it and
100%.
choose. So thank you so much. We're kind of
Yeah.
end of the hour, but I'd love to one last thing is like if you like to share. I know you definitely talked about a lot about discernment, which is a great um, you know, hint of like to share with our audience what would be one thing if you were to leave them with something about what would be the most important hint into or support into their own self-healing journey.
Mm, what would be the most important? Well, one of the most important things,
Or what you would impart to them
I
or
think,
you
yeah,
that is
I know.
important.
I'm like, oh my God, there is a
Yeah.
lot, but I, I definitely think that it's really important to have no expectations, just acceptance, acceptance about where you are in the moment, and also acceptance of your goals, right? It doesn't mean that. To not have any expectation doesn't mean like, oh, I don't want to, I have no goals or nothing to work towards. But no expectations of how it should happen, as again, as a really wise medicine sister of mine said to me once, the how is faith. And so you move forward just understanding that if you walk in a good way, it'll come back to you. And people don't remember all the time what they said to you, but they'll remember how you made them feel. You know, I think it was Maya Angelou who said that, if I'm mistaken, apologies.
Hmm.
But that's so true. So just having no expectations of what your journey should look like, just acceptance of where you are and that you put one foot in front of the other, and don't be afraid to ask for help, to step outside of what is comfortable for yourself, and take calculated risks, understanding when it's time to take a risk and when it's time to turn inwards is so important. So, don't be afraid to ask for counsel. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone and say, hey, maybe I don't have all of the abundance of the money to do this thing that you're doing, but I can provide this, or I can be of service in this way, right? Because if I'm being honest, all of the true healers that I've ever met, like from deep lineages, none of them would turn you away.
Yeah.
None of them would turn you away. Because at the end of the day, if someone is showing up for their own healing, that is more than enough. And when they see the results because they are there and they're doing the work, because they showed up and had the initiative to ask, you already know it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
So I would just say don't be afraid of the possibilities and allow it to be better than you could ever imagine. So I don't know if that's the best advice, but off the top of my
It's
head, after
great
everything you
advice.
just shared,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
definitely.
not a big believer of even giving advice, but there's just yeah, those are just little things that have really helped me out along the way. And to just at the end of the day, you have to be your best self advocate. You have to tune into yourself and know what feels right for you. Get a candle, light a candle, make an altar. These things are so simple and so important, and most cultures do have them. Most religious institutions, even if your culture, you're like, oh, we don't do that. Go to one of your religious institutions. I'm sure they have a candle there that they light for their rituals, and and just understand that this is how this works, right? On try to have every element on your altar. You have earth, whether that's people say, oh, my crystals, whatever, have earth with some kind of earth material. You have a cup of water. You have the candle is the fire, and the air is your breath, because you have to show up. You have to show up to that altar, and you have to ask. You say thank you, and you ask. You share your heart. You share your prayer, and watch what happens. You do that consistently. I had a client the other day, and as she left, I gave her a little bag with some little plant allies to help her out. 7 candles in there, and a little tobacco and copal. And I was like, This is all you have to do for yourself. This is your homework, if you will. Take every night, every day, you show up to your altar and you light this candle. You open the space, just how in every medicine wheel there's the directions. You open the space, you pray, you give thanks. And your offerings as well. You want to talk to an ancestor that's been on your mind that you used to be close with, or you've never met before in your life. It doesn't matter. You remember, if say your grandmother had a favorite drink or a favorite treat, put it on that altar. That's the act of showing up. And again, it doesn't even matter if you believe that's woo woo or not, because if you do it, it'll be real for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't literally just does not matter whether you think it's true or it's too woo or not, because your brain, you're telling it it's true.
Hmm.
This is biohacking at its finest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that do something so similar as creating an altar for yourself and putting the things that are important for you, putting the goals, the things you want to reach, writing a letter on the new moon, right? Putting it on that altar until the full moon. and so it's there for you every day as a reminder, right? We already know there's been enough studies in psychology that the more you're around something, the the more it's going to be prevalent on your mind, right?
Right.
So do those things for yourself. Surround yourself with the person you want to become, right? And then take the actions that it takes to get there and watch the people just come to you. Watch the teachers, the mentors, the friends, the community come to you, you know? So just, yeah, I would say just allow it to be better than you could ever imagine. And we have to learn to get out of our own way. So I
Yes.
pray that it's a smooth journey for everyone involved, everyone who's listening. Thank you, Mahalo, for taking the time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for the beautiful advice. I hope everyone is having a wonderful time. And until next time, thank you, everyone.